Yes.
And it's funny because people would be incredulous about the resurrection of Jesus Christ, but yet they're convinced that the entire universe was smaller than the head of a pin, and for no reason than anybody's adequately explained to me. Makes sense.
Yeah. No.
Instantaneously became everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't buy that.
I'm sticking with Jesus on that one.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus makes more sense.
It's a growing trend. Young people are finding the church expressing interest in Jesus Christ. Many people in this country are starting to become Christian or return to their faith. Notably, Russell Brand famously got baptized and is now a Christian. Even many pro skateboarders who are largely viewed as degenerates. They don't really make a lot of money. They do drugs. They hang out. They're not even rock stars. Many of these pro skateboarders we're finding, they're getting baptized. Joe Rogan may be a great example of this shift when he said he's sticking with Jesus in questioning the Big Bang Theory. Now, I'm not saying Joe's a Christian guy. I'm not saying that in this article he's professing his faith in Jesus. The point he's making is that Jesus seems more probable than the Big Bang. Interesting nonetheless, because that's the path you walk down where you end up saying you're going to be Christian. But this is a growing trend. Let me play this clip for you. We played a little bit in the intro, but I want to show you this clip. We have this from the Postmonial. Podcast host Joe Rogan has once again expressed growing interest in Christianity during his recent episode of the Joe Rogan Experience, telling the guests he finds the idea of Jesus Christ increasingly compelling and even more logical than scientific explanations. He was speaking with writer and TikToker Cody Tucker. Rogan said, "I'm sticking with Jesus. Jesus makes more sense. People have come back to life." Let me play the clip for you. You can hear it in its entirety.
That one.
Yeah.
Well, space is the ultimate who the fuck knows, because we can only see so far. We see so far, but even so far is only so far.
I'm going to pause. I do want to kind of dissect a lot of what they're saying. The first thing you always got to understand about philosophy of knowledge, we actually don't know. We don't see at all. We have faith. This is an important understanding many people do not have. Like, I had this argument with Ian over and over and over again, but people are convinced everything they were told is true. No. The only thing that I know is that I know nothing. That's true. I believe some things because I've chosen to. For instance, Joe says we can only see so far. Joe? Maybe he has. So I won't speak for him, but most people have not actually looked through any of these telescopes. They've not actually looked at any of these planetary bodies. They just believe it because someone told it to them. Some people have done the research. And I happen to be more of a man of science than religion. But there is, and I'll explain why, but let me play more.
And then they're saying like it's always expanding, which that can't be true, because like what is it expanding into? If space is space, you know, if they're like, oh, it's like blowing up a balloon where everything's okay, well, you're blowing up a balloon in a room,
right?
So what's the room that you're blowing the balloon into? And then that's in a bigger room, and then that's in this.
And not right. It may be. Well, actually, I'll let.
Then there's the concept that it's actually finite. It's not infinite, and it's some sort of donut shape. It like
we have no idea.
Goes back around eventually.
But then who made all that?
Right.
Like, is there a God? Did God make this?
Or is God the universe?
Yeah, but then who made God? And then that bothers me.
Right, but
like, who made that thing?
Is that a thing that we think that, like, because we were born and we die, that we have these biological limitations that we attach to the universe itself?
Joe's a smart guy.
That's fair. That we see things as being built and destroyed.
That there's always been something. Well, wouldn't it be crazy if there wasn't something at one point in time?
Yeah.
That seems even crazier. Then there always has been something. Because if it's just something, if it's just the nature of everything, there is always something, right?
Right.
It couldn't be nothing and then all of a sudden everything. That seems...
Because what started that? What kicked that off?
Exactly.
What snapped its fingers? Like
That's McKenna's great line. Terrence McKenna had a great line about the difference between science and religion is that science only asks you for one miracle. I want you to believe in one miracle, the Big Bang.
Yeah. That's a good one.
It's a great line.
Yeah.
It's because it really is true.
Yes.
And it's funny because people would be incredulous about the resurrection of Jesus Christ, but yet they're convinced that the entire universe was smaller than the head of a pin, and for no reason that anybody's adequately explained to me that makes sense.
Yeah, no,
instantaneously became everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't buy that.
I'm sticking with Jesus on that one. Jesus makes more sense.
This is the funny thing. Religion, creationism, evolution, science. Now, I think it's fair to say that some things are easily observable by the average person. What I can say is I have here this hilarious rubber mallet. Raymond left it here. And I know that if I bashed my monitor right now with it, it would break. See, I do know that's true. However, there are greater questions about, say, what do we breathe in? You can do a simple experiment to know that there is a vacuum and that air exists, and that's what high school science class is for. But there are greater questions we can't answer. How did the universe start? Theoretical astrophysics? We think. What happens is when we look through these telescopes, we see, I think it's a redshift. I don't even know these things. Let's get the data pulled up while I talk. I'm pretty sure it's the redshift because I just read some of this stuff. Redshift is a phenomenon where light from an object in space appears shifted toward the red end of the spectrum, meaning its wavelengths are stretched and its frequency decreases. What this implies is that the object is moving away from you because as the universe is expanding and the object is moving away, it makes the light wavelength stretch out. When it's moving towards you, the light is compressing because it's moving towards the light. So that's a blue, I believe that's a blue shift. I don't know. I'm not a physicist or anything like that. So we did this and we were like, hey, everything is kind of redshifting and moving away from us. So the universe is expanding and it looks like it's expanding faster. Well, back in the day, there were a handful of theories. There was solid state theory. There's big crunch theory, the argument that the universe will expand outward, but then collapse back inward. All of those, they're just ideas. And there's a battle of math trying to figure out what is true and what isn't. Joe Rogan is not wrong. Now, the funny thing is, he said people come back to life all the time. He's correct. But that wouldn't be a miracle, would it? Still, it's enough for people to believe that it actually happened. Then we can have a scientific secular view of what Jesus is, in that he's a man who preached this new view of Judaism, essentially, of Christianity, what it came to be. And when they crucified and stabbed him, some have argued, these are secular individuals, he didn't actually die. He was comatose. And when they put him in the cold, dark cave, it slowed down his functions so that he didn't bleed out and die instantly, allowing him to recover a little bit and then escape and run away. Or, if you're of the faith, he died. And then on the third day, he was resurrected. That's a miracle. The other one is just someone trying to explain it. Either way, here's the thing. We know people exist. Sometimes people come back to life. There's potentially powers beyond us. Both religion and the Big Bang contend there's powers beyond our understanding, in which case, Joe's making a great point. It is actually much simpler, mathematically, logically, to say the universe was created and God sent his only son and all of those things, than to believe in the Big Bang. Now, here's what I have to say. I lean towards science for a variety of reasons. I've actually built radio technology personally. I actually built a remote control can of green tea. It's not super complicated to make these things. People think it's more like magic, but when you really go in there and you figure out how to, blast radio waves, batteries and wires and all that stuff, it's not the most complicated thing in the world. I put a couple electric motors on the thing, put a remote control receiver on it, fired away. It rotated I put a green tea can and another can on top, which vibrated it and allowed it to float across the table. I built that. My point is, I've actually done the tests on some of these technologies, and for that reason, I am inclined to believe the rest of science is likely true, but not all of it. What we are seeing, which is fascinating, is there is a blind faith in science that assumes it's all true, but no one's actually done the work. And of course, It's Always Sunny had a bit about this, but this is, it's funny. I talk to atheist, agnostic, secular individuals, and when I make this point, how do you know what you're breathing is air, is oxygen? nobody has a good answer because they've never actually done any of the tests. They just were told it's true and they believe it. Now, you can argue because I know I've done vacuum tests and I have vacuums and we understand how that works. Sure, but I mean oxygen. How do you know that you actually, like the actual chemical composition of the gas that we exist in? Most people have not done any of the science. They just believe it's true. They have no argument then. This is exactly what I was arguing with Ian about. Now, a lot of people who are secular say, that's just from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. No. It is an extremely common grade school level religious study point that is made all the time. And It's Always Sunny was making a joke. Basically, you had, Mac, who's religious, being like, how do you actually know any of these things? And then the argument is, I read it in a science book and they had the pictures. And then he goes, oh, I read in a book that Jesus was the Son of God and he rose from death. He was resurrected. And it says, yeah, well, I have a scientist who told me, it's like, oh, a man you just believe to be right wearing a white robe? Well, a man in a white robe told me. That's the point. None of these people have actually done the scientific tests. Take a look at this. No sex, no booze. We're off to church. Gen Z have found God from the times.com. A YouGov study has revealed that young adults, particularly men, are going to church in increasing numbers. So what's behind this resurgence in faith? Hannah Evans meets the new 20-something Christians. Interesting. Here's one from Barna. 52% of teens are very motivated to learn about Jesus. I'll tell you, I'm still biased towards the science. I'll admit it. Big Bang's a miracle. But to be fair, for all the miracles of physics and reality, I don't think any of it disproves God. In fact, I think it is all mathematically evidence towards a God. Maybe the universe is God, or God is the logic and the logos that composes all of existence. Who knows? I don't. Some people think they know. And none of that means Jesus could not have been here and all that stuff maybe actually happened. But I view these things as being able to coincide with each other. I'm not a Christian, by the way. But I do think that there's a lot of people now, especially these young people, who are looking at the question of humanity. And they're asking, what has this liberal secularism, science, faith gotten us? Nothing but pain and decay. That's a bad thing. And then you start to wonder about why we're here. It can be painful sometimes. Why are we here? Why is anything existing? What is existence? Baffles the mind. Now, Joe made a great point. Maybe the idea of creation exists because we as humans are born and we die. And we assume others must be born and die. But the reality is, the matter that makes us up was always here. Nothing is ever created. It's just rearranged. So, that, I think, is simple enough to prove it. God didn't need to be created. The universe is. There you go. But I think for the average person, when questioning their existence and what is our purpose here, the nihilistic atheists say, there isn't one. So do whatever you want. Okay. And then what happens? People are unhappy. They're depressed. They're miserable. That nihilistic worldview drains you and leaves you wanting. You don't need Christianity for this, but when you find family and duty, you feel fulfilled. It is within you. I think this is why people are turning to Christianity. It's not so much a question about the nature of reality. It's a question of the nature of our purpose. And at the bare minimum, a purpose being offered. Now, as for what Joe is saying, he's not saying he has faith in Jesus, but he is making a powerful point for a lot of people. Resurrection seems more probable than the Big Bang. That's kind of a crazy thing to think. But he's even saying it from a secular point of view. Like, people come back to life all the time. Not even a miracle. Just like a guy was dying and then he resuscitated. Yeah. It's interesting. But messages like that, they're going to lead to more Christians. I'm going to leave it there, my friends. Smash the like button, share the show with everyone you know. Stay tuned. More segments to come, and we will see you all in a little bit.